Well, hey team, Grant Hagen here, host of Reality Capture Live. Thank you guys for tuning back in with us here. We are about to end the year. 2023 is coming to an end. Appreciate you guys joining in with us here for our last Reality Capture Live of 2023. And man, are we going out with a bang. We have some really fun things we're going to talk about today. About a fun report that we're actually going to be releasing really quickly into the new year here in January called the State of Reality Capture, which is, honestly, I love this time of year. It's just fun to reflect back on all the fun things that happened in the year. And honestly, too, it's a fun time. I don't know if you are a New Year's resolution or just talking about planning and all the things New Year, but this is a perfect time to talk about this stuff. One, I just think it's really interesting to see what some of the stats we want to show you guys here today. But just appreciate you tuning in. If this is your first time, welcome in. If you are back with us again, thank you guys for joining back in with us. But today we have a really fun just conversation that we're going to have, like always. But we have brought in Mr. Mike Winn, who is one of our founders and CEO here at DroneDeploy, to really talk about some insights from this report. This report is amazing. A lot of great content in. And as we were thinking about the best way to end the year, we were thinking, man, I always love a good precursor or a good trailer, something to kind of get you excited about something that's going to be releasing here at the beginning of the year. And so we wanted to share some insights as we were sifting through this towards the end of the year. We had a ton of respondents, a ton of different industries and companies and regions that we're going to get into. And so we thought, man, what better way to end the year with insights or some tidbits from this report specifically. So if this is your first time with us here, just a little lay of the land to kind of give you guys some insight. Join the conversation. These are live, specifically live for you to join the conversation in with us. So I have my phone down here with all the comments that pop in here. And if you remember, we do play a nice little jingle or triangle there when we get a good question in. So please join in with the conversation here as we get going, which we just talked about. But real quick, if this is your first time, why Reality Capture Live, what you can expect and how you can engage. We hit on that third one there, but why Reality Capture Live? One of our really core values here on the DroneDeploy team is to simplify. And when we think about this topic and just all the things that we've talked about really in this year through Reality Capture Live, that has been our goal, to simplify this topic, to really bring you experts in to really just take some of the complexities that this is and really simplify it for you to tune in with. So we are excited that you are here. We're excited that you get to kind of glean from a lot of the work that our team has put in to hopefully simplify this topic for you. And lastly, what you can expect. If this isn't your first time, you know that there have been some heavy hitting just guests that we've had on here. This is honestly one of the best things I think we do on this team is to put more people and experts in front of you to engage in these topics. We've had everyone from just customers to industry experts to, I'm going to call Ted, if you are tuning in here, a LinkedIn influencer, if that's even a thing or a phrase yet. But we've had a lot of people in here. And really, these have come from your recommendations, folks that you've told us and you've reached out and said, hey, can you bring this person on or can you have this topic that we talk about? So again, join in on the conversation. We love to see those comments in here. We have a jam-packed full of things that we're going to talk about. But with that, I want to bring in our guest here. This is going to be really fun. One, I love any time I get to talk to Mike because we just drift off into any topic that is top of mind. This one has been really fun just as we've kind of created the slides and we're thinking through what things that we wanted to put in front of you guys. But if you haven't met him, if you haven't attended one of our user conferences or haven't had a chance to be in a meeting with him, this is just going to be really fun. So Mike, I'm going to bring you in here. Thank you for joining in with us on Reality Capture Live, and it's good to see you.
John, thanks for having me. Excited to be here, and hopefully we can drift off into some interesting islands of information.
Drift off, that is true. But to give us some charter here, I do want to kind of give a little bit of the lay of the land of where we're going to go. So this is really awesome, Mike. I kind of wanted to ask you, have we ever done a kind of survey or report like this before, just in your time that we've been at this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything we do at DroneDeploy is because of our customers and what they're telling us. And so that involves lots of one-on-one conversations, but sometimes you just need to do massive surveys. And so I think we've been doing this probably over the last 5 or 6 years. We have this huge community of experts, and it's always so interesting to understand what's important, what's happening, how are they using the technology, where are they finding value. And so this is kind of one of those sensory and quantitative pieces that the team does every year. It used to be focused relatively more on drones, but now we've shifted to being a full reality capture platform, not just aerial data, but also ground data. And so it's exciting to do the first reality capture survey.
Yeah, I think, as I was diving into some of these numbers, one, the stats are impressive, which I'll just move over here and actually show this here as we talk about it. This is impressive. Is this the biggest report that you've seen, at least from a kind of global footprint, respondents? I mean, industry, like I was impressed as we were getting some of these responses back in. But again, you've been at this for a while, so tell me kind of your thoughts to getting some of these numbers in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely seems like the biggest. Looking at 119 countries, that's actually really impressive. So to know that the community is across the entire world, I think where there's business happening, people are using reality capture. So super excited to get this many respondents and such a wide variety across industries and countries. So thank you to everyone that responded.
Mm. Yeah, well said. And we'll give some details kind of towards the end here of, so just to kind of level set, this report isn't out yet, but it is very close. We are putting our final bows and touches on it really as we speak. Our team that has been hard at work in putting these slides together and summarizing it well. But we will provide all these slides afterwards too. So drop a note in the comments for what you're most excited about or what you're interested in seeing here too. But Mike, I'm just going to dive right into it. We have so much stuff that we want to cover. There's kind of different sections here that as we were talking about this, that we were kind of going to get into. And really those sections are just kind of, I use this term way too much. It's 50,000, 30,000 foot, 10,000, we're landing the plane, right? But really these kind of sections break down a little bit of, hey, what's a really high level? We're going to get into some industry specifically and some numbers that we saw. And then we're going to get into some hardware side of it, because that's always really interesting too when we get these numbers back. And then really just the future, some really fun, exciting things as we get to 2024 that we're also outlooking towards as well. So I'm going to pull up this first slide here. To no surprise, Mike, I'm going to camp here for just a little bit, but as you talked about in the report or just doing these over however many seasons we've done this, it's on the rise, right? Like this is no surprise. I think this is something that we kind of knew was trending, but talk a little bit about maybe just this year specifically, because it's an exciting year. We're coming off the acquisition to really grow and expand really more parts of our reality capture journey. But tell me a little bit about your kind of surprise or just your kind of thoughts on 2023 as we're, a few days away from closing up the year.
Yeah. I mean, I started at the high level with the adoption on the rise. You can imagine we started DroneDeploy in 2013, right at the beginning of this. And the bet was early on, it's like, look, if you could provide people with a way to get more eyes on their job sites, to be able to measure what was going on, to be able to understand, to be able to visit virtually, to get a set of superpowers that would help them see through walls and see underground and see what travel back in time. The bet was this would be super valuable. And every year the technology's matured and we've brought more people into the community. And that community has driven us to create better products. And so, which has kind of created this flywheel of every year the product gets better, the community gets bigger, the community invites more people in, more data is shared. And now there are millions of people around the world using reality capture. So very excited to see this growth. And you mentioned there the enterprise business. And if I think about 2023 and the more recent trends, what's interesting is just seeing how big the adoption can get, that just single companies can have thousands of people using reality capture data. And it's super rewarding as a company to build something that people rely on.
Yeah, you're already stepping ahead of me, which is amazing because you were prepped well, I guess. Because that's what I think really these first couple numbers that we were interested in is, hey, what obviously different sizes companies like you've talked about of kind of growing in this adoption. So I thought this stat was pretty surprising too. That over half, I think of this maybe in the other side of it of 40% of these kind of 100 size companies aren't using it, which is a little surprising. But then you dip into the 10,000 plus, which are quite a few customers that we have, and that's pretty significant when you think about almost 80% of 10,000 plus employee businesses. Like I kind of want to camp here a little bit because I think about the 20% and I'm like, man, that's crazy to think when those other 20% maybe are kind of coming along or how they hear about it or kind of their journey into this. But yeah, talk a little bit about these two differences between kind of the 60 and 79%.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is just the technology adoption life cycle. And if you think about our community, probably the people listening, is in general, it's the innovators, the people that are bringing this technology into their companies, and they're the kind of champions for the work that's being done. And over time, it used to, you can imagine, I was just saying, giving the history, 60% now or 79% now for big businesses, it was 0%. And every year that number has climbed. And really, we're getting into the laggards there at
Mm,
79%, the last of the companies to adopt. And I'd bet actually a lot of them are using reality capture without knowing it. Not really. The term is so relatively new, and it's coming, but it's still something that there's a lot of people using it, but there's
mm,
still a lot of people just saying, "Hey, we've done what we've done for the last 10,000 years in some cases. What is this new fandangled thing going to do for me?" And so we're still in that motion where, um, yeah, there's still some people to be convinced, still
mhm,
some value to demonstrate. There's still going to be people that are going to look at change in a negative way. And I'm just, when I think about those 1,400 people responding on the survey, you'll find the of that 20%, there's 1,200 people going at them saying, "Hey, look, here's a
mhm.
technology that's really helped us. Here's a story. Here's why." And I expect next year that 79 to be 85, and then 90, and it's going to gradually get to 100% over the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. No, well said. It kind of goes to this next point of just kind of the velocity of this too. So you think about, okay, if that's the current state, kind of 60 and 80%. But you think about velocity of it too, of like, hey, continuing to invest, continuing to put resources, whether that's staff or actual dollars towards some of this. I loved this question because I thought it was pretty interesting too. Is it not only is it increasing, but the investment is also increasing. I think you start to see, I've interacted with many companies that have full reality capture roles and titles and teams, and those are a part of org structures and those types of things too. And I think investment here is really interesting because investment, I put a little dollar sign emoji, which I love all these little emojis in here, but it's also people, right? I mean, investment isn't just dollars. I guess you could equate it to dollars with staff as well. But yeah, tell me a little bit about this number, because this to me is almost the velocity or trajectory of where, if that grows from 60 to 80 or 79%. Yeah, tell me a little bit about what you've seen in just continued investment.
Yeah. I mean, every year, of course, investments, the market is getting bigger. The technology is getting better, and people are paying more for it. They're using it more widely. I'd say actually this is quite a good stat, because 2023 has been an uncertain year for a lot of businesses.
Mm,
There are lots of companies that are saying, "Hey, look, we're not spending more. In fact, we're spending less. We got to get more efficient." And so the fact that people, even amongst this drive to efficiency, are still saying, "Hey, look, we're going to spend more money here," is just the indicator that reality capture is enabling them to become more efficient. They don't need to visit every job site. So they can take their travel budget and spend on reality capture instead. They're probably reducing risks,
mm.
uh, saving themselves from making mistakes, making better decisions. And so this 60 odd percent is a good indicator that the community is succeeding with the tools they have today.
Yeah, you're jumping a little bit ahead, Mike. So slow down. We got some good stuff in there too that we're going to hit on. But yeah, I think what's interesting too, when we think about the investment side of it is, you talk about how, when we're investing in these tools and resources, that, and we'll hit on this at the end a little bit, is they're getting less expensive, which is also a really good indicator for investments as well. And
Yeah.
gosh, people, and really the talent pool is getting really, really well established. That's also big investments as well. And I think what excites me about that number a little bit is just how companies are really kind of showing that this is like a core function of their business. Like, this isn't just kind of a side research development thing. Like, I always go back to the innovation curve, and you've mentioned it to me many times. It's like, hey, we're kind of past this trough of disillusionment of like, hey, it's been validated. Like, we've seen a lot of what's coming from this, and I just think of like ERP systems, right? Or you think about HRM systems, like these core functions of businesses. Like, reality capture has just really quickly become one of those for these 60% of companies that are making investments. But to your point too, it's like you can't just go out and a la carte and find all these point solutions. At some point, you got to start talking about, hey, what's a platform versus kind of a point solution kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about efficiency, and I think we've just been in this moment over the last few years with COVID that everyone had to go stay at home, adjust how they worked, be exposed to a whole set of tools, and we just saw adoption of so much software, which has
Mm,
been amazing as a software company. But through that, and seeing that there is an app for everything, we've also seen people get app fatigue, and even for us as a software business at DroneDeploy, we've made some decisions to kind of consolidate on the best set of tools. We've seen that having fewer tools that we use more widely, getting data out of the silos, getting people using all the same kind of workflows is just better for people.
mm,
That's less things to have in their head, less tabs to have open, and software consolidation is happening. I think across every business, it's happening in reality capture space. As we all say, "Hey, help me close one more tab.
mhm.
I, I've gone wide. Now it's time to consolidate a bit."
Yeah. No, well said. You kind of alluded to where we're going to go here in a little bit, which is just really those industries, right? I think you were the first one that said this quote, and it's always just kind of locked on with me. But really, these industries that are powering our world. I mean, that's a big and bold statement to make. But you think about the industries that reality capture is impacting. Again, my favorite emojis here. I'm going to give myself a little applause here, but I think what's funny about this is I mean, these are the industries that really affect our day to day lives with, energy and infrastructure and, power. Not to, again, go like too deep into that, but it is. When did you start seeing this shift that, hey, these are the industries that are really starting to see kind of this big investment into this space? Because we have some interesting stats that obviously we're going to like walk through for each of these, but like when did you start to see kind of the circle broadening a bit that it's like, oh, hey, welcome to the family. This is hopefully something that you see value in too.
Well, first, I have to give Jono, my co-founder, some credit for this quote, and he says something which I think is great, which is everything around us is either grown or mined, then it's built, then it's energized and maintained. And yeah, that is exactly the world that we support in our communities. And I think going to the question, like, hey, when did we start seeing this kind of diversity and this happening? Really from the beginning. If you rewind back to 2016, just when we started to kind of monetize our product, as these tools started to become, yeah, possible for a normal person just to buy and make productive to get a drone or a camera up in the air. We started the first space we saw adoption was agriculture, interestingly, because back then drones were not yet reliable. They would fall out the
Mm,
sky. You didn't want to have that in a construction site or an energy plant, etc. But over time, they got better and better. And as they got better, we've just seen people adopt and just see that, hey, look, if I had a drone, um, I could capture, or if I could capture 360 imagery from the ground, this is highly valuable. I can do amazing things with this. And all we did was just focus on saying, hey, look, let's make these tools easy to use. Let's make maps, let's make photos and panoramas, let's make walkthroughs. And we've seen people do amazing things with them. And we try and tell, obviously, what Reality Capture Live to tell those stories. Because with this, just with I've heard from a couple of customers on this show that a picture's worth 1,000 words. And then you think about what's the 3D model with? What's a
mhm,
walkthrough, a street view experience on your job site with? And so it's continued to expand. Now we have people from every manner of industries. Literally, if there's a sun that's shining on a job site, people are probably using it. Even underwater, people are mapping coral reefs. There's archaeologists using the product, using reality capture. There are fire departments, police people like mapping crime scenes, and so there was a crazy. I saw an explosion
mm.
being mapped out the other day. So it's every manner of things, and I just think it's wonderful that people are looking at this technology and being like, "Oh wow, this if I had that tool, this is what I could do," and
Mhm.
then just jumping in, using the tool, and growing the use case in their business.
Yeah, well said. I want to get into some of these specifically for those three that we kind of just highlighted here, but uh, my background is in construction or AEC, and this to me was not a surprise. Maybe what was a surprise is that it wasn't maybe higher. Again, I keep thinking of the 25%, right, or the 19% in the other case. Like, yeah, this is not surprising to me, but very encouraging. I think also when we kind of talked about velocity as well. But I mean, you've seen, a big investment that we made in this space was the acquisition last year. And when we think about this, like that is where, I mean, construction sites change every day. in different sizes, different scales, different scopes of work. And it isn't a surprise that it is so valuable for this industry specifically. But Mike, I mean, you just mentioned, right? Like, we didn't make this product for this industry specifically, but they are for sure the ones that have some of the highest velocity in implementation of it.
Yeah. I mean, if you if you think about all the industries we touch, I think one interesting feature in your last question is that, yeah, they're generally the least digitized industries
Mm,
because they're hard to digitize. Like, it's
hmm.
fun. I mean, obviously, you can't put an RFID tag on every brick or every stud, but you can take a photo of it. And what's been interesting is construction is relatively fragmented in how they buy. Like, different, even the same company across different job sites could be using different sets of tools. Whereas in some of the other industries we serve, like energy or agriculture or retail, they are centralized buyers, and so they don't have as much kind of innovation
Mm.
opportunity. And so it's been awesome to see. I think AC is the largest adopter; it's the biggest user of our products, and that's because they're innovative people in every industry. But those people in AC, I think, have the most opportunity to just go and buy a product, start using it, and create value.
Yeah, I think about just the purpose of the show is in a simplified manner. You hit on some really big parts there of like least digitized industry, really hard to centralize, oftentimes seen as very antiquated, very old, very traditional sense. And I think that's what makes this so exciting is that like this I feel like is one of the first really core pieces of technology that this industry has like latched onto and
Mhm.
said, absolutely, like I have to have it on my next job. Or, and we'll go over some numbers too, because everyone construction is very numbers based, right? And they want to know returns on investments and. But it's really encouraging to see just some of those dichotomies you talked about of like, hey, least digitized but fastest velocity, right? Or
Yeah.
most antiquated but yet simple when that meets simplicity, most easily adopted. So this I thought was really interesting and honestly a testament to I'm sure a lot of the and folks that are listening in right now, even live, like that is a testament to the evangelism of it, right? And the storytelling and the value, spreading through teams and roles and departments within your companies. It's awesome and it's really cool to see. I I often get excited looking back, but I'm almost like more excited for this coming year, just having visited a few more jobs this month before kind of the year ends and seeing some amazing things that are on the horizon. And it's like, oh man, like we're just getting started, which is really, really exciting to think that next year is going to be, I think, even more impactful for AEC.
I agree. I mean, Grant, you got a lot of job sites. When you think about that 25%, the next 25% that's
Yeah.
going to start using this software, what's holding them back?
Uh, Man, Mike, I wasn't ready for your question. Yeah, I mean, I think like uh, a lot of things. I think if I were to probably pinpoint it though, it really is just the story of impact. A big thing that we're trying to do on this team is just man, just share stories. Like stories are, man, when I think about some of my favorite superintendents that I've gotten to work with, they are incredible storytellers. I mean, they love talking about the jobs they built. They love talking about the wins, the relationships, all that stuff. And really, I think about the 25% is really they just haven't heard yet or haven't really been exposed to it, whether that's from just lack of awareness or lack of impact. That's a guess, right? That's a hypothesis. We don't have any numbers around that. But when I think about that 25%, though, I don't think it's really anything that maybe DroneDeploy specifically is going to do to help that awareness. It's going to be the interactions with more and more people from the industry because those are where you're going to get the real stories, the
Yeah.
tangible values and outcomes. And I don't worry about the 25%, just knowing how relational the construction industry is to share some of these things. But I get excited. I mean, I think those are the 25% that when we talk about velocity and we talk about speed to value, that they're quickly going to see um, from their peers and hearing from their peers the value that it could bring to them too.
It's all about the stories. It's like that's one of the things we learned early on. It's all about one site supervisor telling the next site
Hmm.
supervisor how they created value, how they
Yep.
saved $1 million.
Yeah.
And
Let's
that's what I've enjoyed about this show, all the stories of
well,
customers.
we're trying to tell more stories. That is for sure. Let's talk about oil and gas. This one's really interesting too.
Mm.
One because this kind of also alludes to the velocity that we've been talking about a little bit too. But uh, yeah, I mean you've seen these grow significantly. We have amazing customers in this space as well. One in which that it's really encouraging to hear their stories as well of just the value that they're bringing. But yeah, tell me a little bit about what you've seen trajectory wise, and maybe kind of seeing this number now as like a flag planted from the end of this year, moving into next.
What's interesting because it's 60% now. And I remember oil and gas was the slowest mover.
Mm,
And if you think about those companies, they're giant companies that make a ton of money, very centralized in how they make decisions, and huge safety concerns. Everything they deal with is flammable. And so, yeah, it did take a little bit longer to see oil and gas adopt. But when they do adopt, they take it seriously. They go big.
mm,
And they're also using some of the latest technology, using drones and boxes, using ground robots to capture data. And this is all part of their long-term digital transformations. Those companies are betting big on data,
hmm
big on digital twins, and reality capture is just a baseline of a digital twin. What's the state of your asset right now or last week in imagery? And so it's actually really cool seeing, okay, yeah, 60% of the surveyed people said they're already using it and 40% plan to. So
hmm
there's no one without any plans to use reality capture.
Yeah, and I think you made an interesting point. One, I haven't really thought about this, but it is interesting how this industry has been a little slower to adopt, but I mean, to the 40% in the velocity, but also the like very robust R&D departments and very like structured teams to allow that innovation to like quickly grow. Like I just think about like kind of the soil within these companies is very like suitable for research and development, whether that's through money or, resources or
Yeah,
teams. But
yeah,
it is phenomenal to learn and gain some insights from this industry, and again, maybe selfishly from the construction perspective of like, hey, see what they're doing. Like this is also really applicable. We're going to talk about dock drones here in a little bit, but yeah, I just think that's also fascinating too. That maybe I hadn't really considered, kind of until you kind of mentioned that of like, man, it's fascinating how the scale and size of these companies do tend to have the most R&D space and pace that they're really developing in, and then that helps kind of again spread that word to those other industries that are also following.
yeah.
All right, let's get into the last one here. Renewables. This is also really fascinating too. We've put out a ton of different updates to our product in this renewable space here this year, from reporting, AI detection. There's a lot of awesome stuff, and I think this is really cool from kind of the ground and air perspective as well. But yeah, talk a little bit about the renewable side here, Mike. Like what kind of stands out as you've seen? We've obviously case studied a couple different industries here, but the renewable side is also very fascinating. Large scale sites, hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of acres, completely remote, locations, which is also like another very interesting component to it as well. That this industry has been very fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it's a collection of really interesting industries, and all of them are new. So I think one thing that's interesting to me is like, why isn't that higher? Because if you're going
Mm,
to start a new process, why aren't you using the latest technology? Um, I would say we see a lot of differences amongst companies here and how they use the technology. We
mm,
have some of the biggest users of reality capture at all in renewables, but we also have a bunch of companies that just like, hey, we're dealing with a lot of new stuff already. We can't deal with new processes too.
mm.
I think the exciting thing is just seeing how big those companies can get in those sites. We've got like 8,000-acre solar sites with hundreds of thousands of solar panels and modules and piles that need to be counted with AI. We're seeing probably the biggest penetration of AI in this space with,
Mm.
I think we do hundreds of thousands of solar roof measurements with AI, not just measuring the roof in 3D, but also detecting obstructions and marking them all out at incredible levels of accuracy. So it's a really exciting space. It's also different things, which is
Yeah.
interesting. That's probably true in a lot of what we do. People can use a photo for so many different things, but that's one I think we're going to invest even more in. I think one thing that's exciting here is the use of robotics. We have
Mm,
partners that are using our software to do ground robotics inspections using taking photos, getting a robot to roll along the solar panels, take photos, and detecting anomalies autonomously. And so there's a lot that can happen here. So this is one number I'm hoping to
Yeah.
increase the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it's close to 50%, which I think is encouraging. I think what you said a little bit too is, you know, hey, I just there's so many new processes in this side of the industry too. And I think out of the three, not to say there aren't small construction sites or there's small oil and gas refineries, but man, these are thousands of acres
That's
of
right.
sites, right? And you just think about how, whew, I mean, just the remoteness, the scale. You talk about above, like it's becoming pretty normal to do an aerial inspection, a thermal inspection of a solar field. But hey, what about the underside of these panels? So, like, are you going to go send someone out there to walk and document everything on the undersides of those panels? Like, no, that's that. I think that's what gets really exciting about this specific industry is the automation truly is like the unlocker of all the efficiency that's needed. And you talk about dock solutions, you talk about ground robotics, you talk about AI that's not, I mean, think about the thousands and thousands of, data points that we're analyzing. Like you do things on the scale that renewables is doing things on, you have to have efficiencies baked in. Like you can't, and maybe that is why the other 55% here is, hey, it's just the scale is sometimes really hard to kind of work past until you have some of those processes built out.
That's right. You might be using aircraft and satellite data at that
Mm,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Very fascinating. I love breaking down these three industries. One, because uh, it's so fun to see how much they do really teach the others. Like I think there's so much overlap. We talk about some of the events that we do in our conference and other things that people come and attend to. And man, I think some of the best conversations that come from those are people that are interacting and engaging with each other. Like they're like, hey, what are you doing? How are you managing your refinery? Like, oh, I didn't even think about the ability to do that, on a schedule and through a doc solution instead of just having said pilot, be out there
Right.
on a construct. So that I think is what's really fascinating about these industries is that, man, there's so much to learn from each of them. They all have their own kind of unique challenges, but yet those challenges definitely kind of bleed into some other inefficiencies that the other ones can kind of glean from. So that's awesome. That was kind of fun to just kind of go through and think about kind of at a high level. But everyone wants to talk about numbers, Mike. Everyone wants to talk about the dollars, the ROI, all that stuff. And I think it's important. These numbers may surprise a lot of people. They don't necessarily surprise me. The maybe amount is very high, but talk. I mean, this is a huge barrier for some organizations, some teams, some departments of just ROI, return on investment. And I think the fascinating thing here was, I mean, what do we say? 1,400 respondents on this, right? Basically, 4% under are seeing ROI like that. And it's obviously in different categories, right? Some of those that we had listed out here, but I, to be at 100%, I think also speaks to the kind of velocity in which we're going as well. But do these numbers surprise you? Are you surprised by the categories of some of these numbers too? Like, I'm not. I mean, obviously, we talked about how much and how fast this spreads once people, do see the value in it. But yeah, tell me kind of a little bit of your perspective.
No, I mean that it makes a ton of sense, and that fits together with people wanting to increase their expenditure on reality capture. We have our community is sane people that look at the facts and like, hey, look, this is something that's creating business value. Let's do more of it. Um, I think one thing that's interesting about ROI is that it can be very easy to understand the I side, but very hard to understand the R side, especially in what people do with our technology. You can do so many different things. And how do you attribute the value of eliminating a risk or being able to communicate something more clearly at a team meeting and reducing back and forth? So it can be quite hard to measure the return. But one thing we've increasingly heard from our customers is not so much about necessarily numerically understanding that, but creating the
Hmm.
story that their leadership can believe. And I've actually got a board member that likes to say, it's like, what do I need to believe to believe? And we're seeing more of those stories that create that belief and just creating all these things, better visibility, saving time, increasing customer satisfaction. And that's driving the adoption.
Yeah, I think I was on a job this week, just talking to some folks about just this question in particular, not related to this report, but yeah, it was fascinating how they were talking about the client. They were talking about just their experience in working with their company. And it's fascinating. I don't think oftentimes satisfaction comes into play here. Like visibility is great, saving driving time or, travel time to job. But the satisfaction thing is very interesting because, and maybe this is a bad analogy, but, I accustomed it to, if you got a security system at your home, there's, visibility into your house when you're away or your apartment when you're away. And I think the challenge, is that you've come to almost expect that. And, when you think about an owner, either maintaining a facility or seeing their new, building grow and get built, like they've come to expect that kind of level of visibility in on, these projects. And I'm not necessarily surprised about the visibility. You talked about COVID a little bit ago of how that clearly it helped the spike of engagement and value and use to a lot of those things too. But the satisfaction, I think, is very fascinating. I agree with what you're saying. The R is very hard to quantify, which we will. So don't worry if you're sticking around here and curious of the dollars. But yeah, I just think these categories are really interesting to hear. And one in which I hear all the time, going out on jobs, just sitting in job site trailers and saying, hey, like, what's your elevator pitch for wanting to use this on the next job, or your elevator pitch to your exec team that asks, hey, what's this line item in our budget?
Absolutely.
Let's go to a little maybe supporting quotes to this, and we won't read through all these, but yeah, in case you're curious or you're tuning in here and you're like, okay, that's great, I see those categories, but what's underneath those? These are some of the quotes that we kind of pulled from that, which we've kind of touched on a little bit. The storytelling part, which I think you've touched on, Mike, a little bit too, and I liked this top one here of kind of the what ifs. There's a lot of folks that need to run through different scenarios, and we talk about the renewable side of it. They're running through scenarios all the time with their sites and, how many panels to put out and really understanding that land and what they can do with it. I just think the what if scenarios also opens up for this kind of level of efficiency that's built in out there. But if you hadn't seen or you will see when this report comes out, some of these specific comments as well. But let's talk about money. Everyone loves talking about the money. I found this very fascinating. One, because I think we stretched it quite a bit, which is to the tune of dollar amounts and kind of figures. But when I thought about this top one, Mike, the 86% of 5K as just a very simple like dollar return, that is more, or not, maybe not more, but very comparable to what the entry level costs are to getting into just documenting your job. So I think about that 86%, and they're like, okay, I went out and I either bought an aerial camera or drone, and I bought a ground capture of a 360 camera. I am returning on that value. I have seen the value come from that in just 5K alone. Like that to me is really encouraging, mainly because if it's not, then you kind of look at that investment and you're like, what am I doing with this? Like, is this really proving to be valuable? But I know you want to talk about the 50 and 100K that we posted here, which I do think are very fascinating to think through. But yeah, what were your thoughts when you kind of saw some of these numbers pop up?
That is awesome to see it. And you think about that's one individual saying, I've saved over 100,000. I've seen over $100,000 saved. One individual. It's not a company responding to a survey. So just awesome to see people creating value with the technology. That's why we use it. Because we're not just using it for fun to say, let's go and capture pretty photos. You're using it to solve a problem. And these problems are big problems. And so just awesome to see that pretty much everyone is seeing big value and some people are seeing massive value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those numbers, and again, the report will have a lot more breakdown of kind of where those came out and what specifically those tuned into. But yeah, you bring up a good point, Mike. It's like, hey, those are individual responses. So you think about, hey, 2 or 3 of those per company, like that's a lot, and it adds up very quickly if you want to go into the very hard dollars and cents from that perspective as well. But I want to tune and kind of transition a little bit here to the back end as we're kind of wrapping things up. Just talking about the future a little bit, because that also is kind of think about next year and some exciting stuff that's coming down the pipeline. We have a couple numbers here that kind of allude to the future of just continued investment and spend and some kind of pain points associated with that. But Mike, I'm curious to kind of, let me move one more slide here. I'm interested to kind of hear your thoughts to this because this is really interesting. I'm sure you probably had this question 5 years ago as you were thinking about what and where the product was going to go, but 92% is a pretty high number that is saying, hey, like this is helping me stay competitive. This is helping me win more work. This is helping me be more efficient in the land and investments that we've made with our infrastructure. Like 5 years, gosh, I can't. I mean, we could camp out on that for a long time. Just what 5 years is going to look like, but the fact that it was in the 90 percentile, I think is very encouraging to hear. But also, yeah, I mean, what are your kind of take on that?
I mean, they say is the any constant is change, and people are adapting. Businesses are changing. I think one thing that's like interesting and not really said in here, but I think there obviously a lot of people are aware of the tidal wave of AI coming, and that's all going to be powered by reality capture. If you're in one of these relatively undigitized industries, it's like, well, what's the state of things? What's if you want to be able to think how that AI will be able to impact your business? It's like, well, the first thing it needs to know is what's going on. What does your job site look like? And so we think not only for the reasons that you're using reality capture today, that is it'll be required for any company to stay competitive to be using. But if you think about adapting your business to the future, about having the power of machines to help you understand exactly what progress you've been made, where is the work happening, where are the problems, where's the risk, and the ability to talk to data on your job site, say, hey, look, um, yeah, uh, where am I behind schedule on a construction site, and the AI to be able to look at the reality capture and just tell you, or in an oil and gas facility to say, hey, look, where are the anomalies on the gauges that are not yet digitized? Well, if we can capture those gauges every hour with a ground robot, we'll be able to ask questions like this and be able to get every person to get an instant understanding of what's happening on that job site without having to walk around.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, it's a good point. The jobs that I've gone to and just asked this question to other folks on the teams out there is, hey, like when you think about competitive landscape construction being so competitive in a lot of ways, you think about how do you differentiate yourself? We talked about customer satisfaction being a huge thing, right? I mean, construction is a very relational industry of repeat business and continuing to build out your portfolio of customers that you've worked with on a repeated sense. And yeah, I just think about the competitiveness is really fascinating because this is an industry that is past its semi-maturity state, right? Like you don't have to kind of wonder if this is going to stick around. You don't have to
Yeah.
wonder, hey, should I keep be making investments into this, not only financially, but from a personnel standpoint? Like I think that is a really exciting part about this. And hey, if competitiveness drives you to it to be more interested, great. Like that's awesome and encouraging to hear. But yeah, I just thought 92% was significantly higher. One, I think it may be a little bit higher than what I thought, but from a sense of, yeah, hey, this is something that is differentiating us in these either competitive opportunities or even attracting talent, which, Mike, we could even go into that sense of, hey, when you talk about kind of the talent gaps and needs that are out there, you want to market your company as someone that is using the forefront of these tools and technology. And gosh, I mean, imagine, just think about like Sunrun, a huge customer of us that have come out and said, they're hiring techs that if their tech is interested in hearing that, hey, you guys are using these aerial workflows to go and document these instead of me physically going up and walking on a roof, like how is that not attractive
Mhm.
to someone from a next career opportunity perspective and being able to use the latest and greatest to go home safer and to be more efficient. It's just interesting to think about competitiveness. Maybe has a couple different ways to think through it, but
No, I think what's happening now is like, hey, today it creates a competitive advantage, and like, if you think about these workflows, they are simpler, better, and faster. They're more efficient. They're safer. But what's interesting is just in the same way we've seen in other technologies, like there's this concept of IT that doesn't matter to businesses. You can't get more competitive. You can't beat your competitor with IT. This is a theory from a couple of years ago because everyone's using it. you can't not. The companies that don't adopt this technology won't be here. And so you're going to be in this state. It's like, well, just to survive, you're going to need to leverage this technology. And so this wave is coming. It's lifting all the boats, and it's making things more efficient, safer. But it's just going to be a critical component in how people work.
You talked about this a little bit ago of just the kind of what are the pain points that are really driving people to use reality capture, and this is a huge one. You touched on this a little bit about just like fragmented, technology solutions, and I love this section of the report when we put it out, and just some of the numbers that were coming back in, because I mean it just puts numbers to what everyone's feeling and what everyone's experiencing, right? I mean, there's some incredible studies out there if you haven't Googled or looked around of just fatigue of inefficiencies built into your team or staff's day of just multiple tools that they're using. I mean, that is a study in itself that I think speaks loudly when we get into the specifics of, how is multiple point solutions becoming a pain point. Some of these numbers I think are pretty interesting too. But yeah, I mean, Mike, you've been saying this for a while, but even to see some numbers now on this year's report, how do you kind of interpret some of this?
No, I mean, this is across every industry, reality capture, but others as well. Like I was looking at a report where found there are these tools that can track the apps that people are using in their tech stacks. It's not surveys; it's actually reporting on actual tool use. And that just in 2023, the number of tools that the average company was using was down 10%.
Hmm.
Yeah, because of this app fatigue, because people want all the data in one place, they want one way of working. They're probably using something like 50 tools. Every additional one they've got to learn how to use just takes time. And especially if you're a field worker, that pain is even bigger. And so, yeah, this is a bet we made. We heard about from our customers probably starting 4 years ago. We heard this need to centralize all the data, to have one tool to unify. And that was obviously the driving factor in deciding, hey, DroneDeploy needs to be more than just drones. It needs to be air and ground. And that was what led to the acquisition merger of Struction sites, who were hearing the same from their customers, saying, can we just have one product that does both? It's going to show me a 360, show me it in the air and the ground. It's going to be so much more valuable. The teams are going to use it more. We're going to get higher ROI. And so this is a trend that we expect to continue. There's going to be more consolidation in the future.
Yeah. Maybe this year more than any, right? That's kind of become the conversations that we've heard, is just not only just these industries and teams consolidating their tools, but yeah, I mean, if there's apps that are out there or tools or software that's like actually tracking the usage of some of these, like, whew, oh boy, wait till you see some of those numbers that definitely play into it too. Mike, I want to transition a little bit more. We got really two things specifically that we're going to finish up here is really the hardware and kind of some of the future side of it. But I thought this was kind of surprising. So some hard facts about hardware. The tools for capturing, obviously a lot of the folks that respond to this are using drones and aerial capture to capture that data. Coming from the ground perspective and using their phones, like that's also becoming more and more just normal to use. Which is encouraging. Everyone's walking around with a camera in their pocket as well. But this was really the one that I kind of wanted to get to as well, was the sensor, right? So we talk about, drones is really just a medium for any sensor that you want to kind of throw on it. This to me, I think, is fascinating when we start to look at some of these numbers, especially in the 360 camera kind of trajectory. The pace in that has really continued to rise, not just because of the equipment being more cost effective and more readily available, but I think the value that is coming from them from a cost perspective as well. Did any of these kind of stand out to you, of just kind of the sensors specifically? These are always something that we're talking about on our team, of just what the diversity of different capture types are out there and what continues to be ingested into the DroneDeploy platform, of what people are wanting to visualize.
Yeah, there's actually a bunch of things here, different stories. Like I think obviously a lot of 360 cameras, they didn't exist 5 years ago. And we've seen them rapidly grow. LiDAR and laser scanners is actually interesting to me, just how high that is. I'm wondering like what type of LiDAR and laser scanners people are talking about. Are they the static, or are they on their phones, on the drones? It's kind of interesting because you've got these different tiers where take a drone. Drones have like like a moderate barrier to entry in the fact that you've got to fly something. You went to get a Part 107 in the US to fly them, but they provide the superpower for the first time you can fly and get this kind of this this overview of what's going on in the site that you care about. So that's kind of got the superpower. On the other hand, 360 cameras are like, hey, you can walk around and turn your head, but for the first time, you can just use a camera to record your entire surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really driven. It's more accessible, easier to use. You don't need to get any licenses, etc. But then you go down a step and laser scanners, like, hey, that's way more sophisticated. That's the next level where you're not just looking at imagery, you're looking at point clouds. And thermal cameras, again, where you've got to understand different types of things. So it's actually interesting to me just how evenly split the
Yeah.
360 laser scanners and thermal cameras are.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what definitely, I mean, what's funny about this is these all have very different price points. They have very
Yeah.
different entry points, like what you had said too. And I think how close they are, I think kind of makes me think of like the toolbox I have at home, right? Is like, hey, I'm diversifying a lot of things in that toolbox. Like I know a hammer isn't going to do a screw job and it's not going to do a flathead screw job. Like that's what's interesting to me is like, I think the trajectory of this and just the snapshot in time would tell me that, hey, reality capture isn't just one medium. Obviously, cameras
Mhm.
are a very first start, not only because it's in your pocket, but people have been using aerial opportunities to capture that as well. But yeah, I mean, you have to diversify your toolbox if you want to do the jobs that you're after well. And they have very different price points, just like any tool out there that you put in your toolbox have
Yeah.
very different ranges of like the very entry to the very expensive. And to think that LiDAR, probably because it's been around longer than 360 cameras, is probably why
Mhm.
it's a little higher there. But quickly at its tail, 360 cameras being so cost effective, so valuable in the use case that they bring to. And I like what you said too about the thermal side of it, because that too does require a little bit of, I mean, thermography is its own, certification and what,
Yeah.
you start talking about emissivity ratings of different materials. Like there is a whole component of thermal capture that isn't just go out and fly a thermal photo and capture it and you're done. Like there's a lot into that, and so I just think each of these segments has a really um, diverse kind of subset of knowledge associated with it. That yeah, that probably of the three of them really being close behind each other. I thought was just interesting as we were kind of pulling this side
Yeah.
of it.
Well, I'll tell you one more thing. Is three of the four are well supported in the DroneDeploy product. Watch the space for the fourth
Yeah.
LiDAR.
Yeah, and the LiDAR part's really fascinating too because definitely has a pretty high cost barrier of entry, which is totally fine. I mean, I think you think of construction, they're significantly invested into those with full teams or full service providers that are, getting into providing that as a deliverable as well. Uh, you added a couple of these slides, which I think are just fascinating as people are, using our platform and wanting to know what tools people are using. This time last year, we were talking about the M3E and it being supported in our platform and the value that was coming from it. It clearly has been the star of the show for a lot of reasons, many good reasons, for being the most tool or most utilized tool to capture data. And then you also kind of noted in here just the differences of 360 cameras as well and kind of a lower cost everyday camera to maybe a higher quality, a little bit more expensive camera from the 360 side. Anything that stood out when you were seeing kind of these numbers that we pulled?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of surprises. The Mavic 3E has been growing tremendously quickly. That's now the most used product on DroneDeploy. So this you can upload data from any camera. People upload photos from iPhones or Cessnas, but Mavic 3E is definitely the biggest. The P1 is a surprise, just
Mm,
how people are using it. This is actually measured in pixels, and so the biggest cameras I'll show a little bit more here. But that's a really impressive sensor. It costs a lot of money though. And then you just got the amazing staying power of the Mavic 2 Pro. I mean, that came out in 2018. It's still a great product. We're seeing people increasingly move to the Mavic 3E on that. And then of course you've got the others, the SenseFlies, the probably the Wingtras from the Sony RX1. So it's really good to see the variety of drones
mhm.
here in the top 10.
And I think a great note too. Definitely not going to dive into it here, but I mean, you mentioned it. Like, bring your bring your data set, right? Like, it doesn't really matter what drone or what device you're capturing from. Like, our goal is to really bring it all in the same place and have access to it. I think, you know, this kind of surprised me a little bit because I've always been interested to see, hey, what is that price point from the ground capture that people are, you know, willing to spend. The RS1 inch is a phenomenal camera, phenomenal 360 camera specifically. That, yeah, it just has really rich quality imagery that I think, coming from an aerial solution that had really high quality imagery too, it's like, all right, I expect that from, you know, the ground capture. And there's a little bit of a bump in price, but man, I, having used it and seen it for myself, it's good to see that that's on the close end of just what our users are using for the ground capture too. But
Yeah, and that's growing a lot faster. The X2
mhm,
has obviously been around for a while. People continue to use it. It's a good product. But the RS1 inch is growing a lot faster. That is the preference for anyone that's going to take this seriously and it has a moderate size sight.
mhm.
Will be buying the $1,000 camera.
Yeah, I want to hit on these too as we're kind of getting close to the end here. But you know, the amount of high accuracy flights that we're seeing are obviously continuing to grow for a lot of reasons, not just feature related and equipment related. But you had a note in here that, because I want to camp here for maybe a quick second, is like, do you think the RTK module as a part of the M3E is more of a kind of just an awareness of what it can do or why you would add it? Like, tell me a little bit about just kind of this statistic of, hey, the folks that are buying the M3E maybe aren't also buying the RTK module that can be put on top.
Yeah, I mean, I think at first there's there's a lot of good reasons to upgrade your drone to the Mavic 3E. People are doing it for the battery life, the better camera, the better remote control, the better experience. And so people are starting there, but I think a lot of people don't yet know the value of having the
Mm,
RTK or don't know how easy it is to use it. And I'd say maybe that was a barrier to entry before. It was you just didn't know a bunch to use RTK. You had to just subscribe to networks, to use PPK. You need to go through all these steps. You need to understand a lot. And that's something at DroneDeploy, I think you mentioned the simplify at the beginning. That's one of our values. It's like, how do we make these into processes that are so simple, they're literally 0 steps. You just dump your data in and it works. You just connect your drone and it works. And I think that's been a big enabler for the community and driving this increase in high accuracy flights. I think now the remaining 56%, I think if you take your data seriously and if accuracy matters at all, it's worth spending the extra $700 to get that RTK hat. You'd be surprised how easy it is to
mhm.
get that accuracy. It's no longer challenging. And then now all your data is comparable across time. You can have more confidence in that data. You can start using it with all sorts of other data products that require high accuracy. So that's a huge trend for us at DroneDeploy. It's a space we're investing a lot, and really we want to make high accuracy default to every data set.
Yeah, and man, you want to talk about an overwhelming topic in accuracy. One, there's reason that there are like specialized folks that go through this, but it has come so far when we talk about simplicity and we talk about just the steps that can unlock a lot of workflows from your job and from your project sites. And so, yeah, I think I get excited about the fact that it was modular, right? It's like, hey, upgrade your drone without even having to upgrade the full drone itself. Like that to me, I think is really encouraging because you don't have to go out and invest in a whole new piece of equipment. You know, it's a module. It's something that you can add on and put on top of it. But I want to get to this future part because this to me is like 2024 coming in hot, super exciting. I've had a chance to visit some jobs that feel, I mean, they are essentially the future of using automation and really taking advantage of drone in a box or a docked drone specifically. These numbers to me, I thought were very insightful as well. Some may see them and oh my gosh, they're so low. And we can even talk about just how far this has come over time, right? You know, we've a long time ago we were talking in, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now we're talking of tens and thousands of dollars here, you know, coming into next year. But yeah, tell me a little bit about this, Mike, because the future is here. Like we are seeing it. We are
Yeah.
benefiting from a second generation of docked solutions coming out that we are already ready to plug and play and ready to go with. But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the excitement here. But yeah, tell me a little bit about your thoughts just when seeing some of these numbers and where folks are at.
I love that. You said that the future is here. And there's that great quote. The future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. And
Mm,
that's what you're saying. There's 4% of respondents saying they're already using it on a lot of projects. And obviously, I think the thing here is that the majority of people don't know how soon it's coming.
Mm,
I think the thing that we're very excited about at DroneDeploy is that historically, if you pay 250 grand for a drone in the box, you needed the full automation. You needed the BV loss waivers. But if you could buy a drone in the box for 15 grand, maybe that's a better drone than buying the 30 grand high resolution one. Now you can just go outside and your workflow can be, is it safe to fly? Press go. Everything else can be taken care of for you. And the bet for us is that if we can make that some workflow just one step to go and create drone data, all you got to do is be outside and press the button. You can fly these drones in boxes with Part 107. And just like you're saying, the modularity of the Mavic 3E RTK is powerful. The modularity of saying, hey, you can buy a drone in the box, you're going to get the benefits of simplicity and speed and efficiency of using a drone in the box, not touching anything every time. Then you can go and upgrade to the module of BV loss and getting to fly every day on a schedule.
hmm
That's 2024 is going to be a huge year for that with the DJI Dock 2 coming out. Skyday's got a product. Autel's got a product. There's going to be many more. And I'd say finally these products are going to be materially leveraged by our customers next year.
Yeah, I may overstate this a little bit, but I don't know that there's an more exciting year or kind of time that we've thought of looking into the next year. Obviously, this time last year, we didn't even know what the letters GPT meant or had an impact. And obviously, it's
Yeah,
changed significantly in the space, even in 2023. But man, automation, it is it is so exciting, and not, I think, just because of the equipment. The equipment's amazing, and it is amazing to go touch and feel and see the job site of the future. But it's also, you have to marry that with the software, and you have to have the tools that unlock everything that that hardware is providing you to do. And again, that's where obviously we feel really well positioned in that. But I don't think 4% here, which is amazing to think. I mean, that's over 40 people, if I do my quick math right, that responded to the survey that are already using this. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
yeah,
And hopefully we come back here this time next year, and man, that it would not surprise me if that's in the 20s, 30s, 40s%
I'm
uh,
right with you.
in a lot of ways. So lots of really exciting stuff to think there.
Can I
Any other
jump on
thoughts?
one point there? Just saying 2024 is an exciting year. I would say what's interesting about automation, you mentioned GPTs and AI, is all these things fit together. If you have an automated robot on the ground or in the air, it can produce a ton of data. We think it'll produce 10 to 100 times more data. So you can't look at all of that. You need the AI. And luckily, just in time for this, all this new generative AI has come out that we can leverage to assess all that data. And what's exciting about having all that data in AI, it's not just going to be one type or the other, just not comparing maps against each other. It's taking in the whole context. How do we get the ground data and the aerial data and LiDAR all together in one spot? And so that's the unified. And so those are the three pillars of our strategy: automated, intelligent, and unified, all coming together to really elevate that ROI, we think, between 3 and 10x over the next 2 or 3 years of using
Yeah.
reality capture.
And if you've stuck around long enough and you're still here with us, you care about numbers. That is very clear. We know that numbers may be the thing that get you excited out of bed, and like, and it's awesome. I think it's just really fun to just take a snapshot and say, hey, we can obviously come back and watch this in years to come and say, hey, where were we at the end of 2023? And where do we see a lot of excitement coming into next year? And so I'm sure many of you that are watching and tuning into this, whether live or recorded, uh, when will this come out? When will the full, and again, this was just a highlight. I love the preview that we have here on this slide. This was just a preview of this full report, but it'll be coming out early next month. And you'll have the opportunity to have access to it. I did want to pull up a link that we will put in here to have you have access and just kind of know where it is that you can go and access this. We've created a landing page for you guys to kind of get an insight of where and what's all going to be in here. And obviously, if you filled out and were a respondent, one, thank you, and are tuning in to see some of these. But if you weren't a respondent and want access to this, we'd love to send it on over to you guys as you are, again, just continuing on your journey in reality capture and seeing where this technology and really this space is continuing to grow. So, Mike, I just want to thank you for all the time. This again, we stayed pretty on track, which I'm encouraged by. A lot of good stories along the way in there too. But anything else that you would want to add, or anything that we didn't get to touch on?
No, just thank you to the community for answering the survey, and excited to do this again next year and see how much those numbers have grown.
Yeah, well said. We did get a question down in the chat. Is this going to be recorded? Yes, 1,000%. If you haven't seen our YouTube page, a lot of the recordings for all the episodes that we've done Reality Capture Live are on there. You can also find them on LinkedIn, where we do broadcast these too as well. So with that said, thank you again for all the folks that are tuning in and watching. Mike, what a great year. Super fun to close things out. Appreciate all the time and just thoughts on where we came here as well. And so I'm going to bump you out here and kind of close us out for the rest of the folks. Thank you again for just tuning in with us here. This was really a fun initiative that we hope you guys enjoyed getting to be a part of. We've done, gosh, probably 7, 8 of these now towards the back end of this year, and I just really had fun. I hope you guys have learned something new, interacted with someone that we've had on, engaged with them with different questions that you've had. And so really just appreciate the time that you guys have invested into continuing your journey in this space. We hope these have been valuable, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear what other topics that you have. We're already building out some of the content and ideas that we have for next year. And so let us know, drop us a note in the comments below to really give us some of those thoughts that we can continue to tune into. So thank you again very much. I hope you guys had a great year of 2023. We appreciate all the time that you've spent with us here as a part of Reality Capture Live, and we will see you in 2024. Take care. Thanks.